Hello and welcome everybody. Joel Rather here with the H3O podcast once again, and I am solo today. Jason is otherwise engaged, and so we try and get this guy on the podcast for a while. I think we've exchanged probably, I don't even know, it seems like hundreds of messages at this point back and forth about all sorts of things, from just general things and keeping up with each other, supporting each other. Both being from Colorado and love what this guy does, and he puts in the miles and puts in the work, and so it's fun to watch other guys that show the level of dedication and probably just exponentially more hours even that I get out into the field. But so we're pumped to have Rivors Koskinen on tonight. He is otherwise known as the Antler Alpha, owner of Mile High Pursuit, and so we're pumped to have you. How's it going today?
Oh, pretty good. How about you, man?
Good. It's good to finally connect and maybe have more of a dialogue rather than just kind of keyboard warrioring it back and forth. So
Yeah.
But so a couple things. So obviously very well known. I think a lot of what you're following and a lot of what you've done over the years comes from, you're a pretty straightforward guy. People watch what you do. Tons of passion for getting out into the field. And like I said, kind of in the intro, it seems like every week you're just, you're pounding the trail. And to me, I think that number one, it probably makes the hunt a heck of a lot easier when it comes that time, because nothing's a surprise to you at that point, right?
Right.
And number two, the amount that you probably gain and learn. And so I kind of wanted to start there, which is, obviously you're not going to be like, oh, hey, where do you go? I'm sure you've got that one 100 times. We all love that question, but more importantly, just like, what do you do in terms of how you plan? Because as much time as you do spend, I think it's interesting, how guys kind of come up with what they're going to do, where they're going to go, and that type of thing. So, do you have a strategy for how you kind of, prepare for the season?
Honestly, it's just boots on the ground, really. We've spent a lot of years scouting areas and kind of checking areas off the lists and stuff, and we've kind of dialed it in, and we've got on some great animals, and we've dialed down our areas, so now it still never stops. It's always boots on the ground, always scouting, but every year it's the same stuff. We're out there no matter what, whether it's shed season or it doesn't matter, but we're always scouting no matter what time of the year it is. So we just put in a lot of time, and that's what makes us successful.
Yeah, I think that's something for me that I think as I've evolved, over the years, it's understanding that, the things that we have at our disposal, which is, hey, I can be out in the woods in a very short time, and it's just committing to putting more time and the things that you start to learn. I think last year for us, we did a couple extra trips where, we wanted to find new territory, and we wanted to get into some new spots, and we used maps and all those kinds of things to try and help you be educated about what you do. But, so I think that's invaluable compared to, where a lot of other guys just kind of go, well, we're going to go on a hunt, and we're just going to, throw a dart at the map and hope that something hits. And so, I think that probably shows in how much success you've had. Talk about, shed hunting's coming up. I know east of Colorado, east of I-25 right now, shed hunting is open, but west of I-25, which is obviously a massive majority of where, the other 75% of the state where most people are looking forward to that. What are you doing right now in terms of that? Is it kind of like a combo where you're looking at it saying like, well, I'm going to use this not only to scout for sheds, but also to scout for the season? Like, do those things parallel each other at all for you?
Yep. Just because a lot of the areas I hunt, the animals are pretty local. They don't migrate to shed. So I can do a lot of that scouting for sheds and scouting for hunting season at the same time, which is pretty neat. But this shed closure is just complete BS. But honestly, if I was actually doing harm to the animals, I wouldn't be going out there, but I do still go out and glass and scout. But yeah, it's crazy, but we're still out there.
Yeah, I find that so interesting to me when you think about that like you kind of mentioned that real briefly, which is that you're talking about something where you know you're not doing any harm to the animal, you're not you're not putting pressure on the animal, you're not doing anything to disrupt them, and yet there's kind of a season for something that to me I look at it and go, it's kind of an organic thing in nature. And to me, when I actually, in relative, short term, realized that there was even a season 2 shed hunt, I was like, that's just odd to me in general. I mean, I know you probably have a heck of a lot more input or idea on that, but like, just give me what your thoughts on it.
It's just, I think if they actually went through and kind of separated it by unit, I think that'd be better. Because like the Gunnison Winter Range, stuff like that, where the elk migrate down thousands of feet to winter and shed, I think it makes sense there. But a lot of Colorado is dry. We don't have real harsh winters, and it's just pointless for us over here.
Yeah, I agree. And Noah Prince, who's one of our guys from Split Time, works in our building. And the kids, I mean, he's like you. He's like a magnet. I don't even know. Like, he sent us a picture today, and he lives kind of a little bit south, and he has a ton of connections and some places that he goes east of I-25 right now. And like, he just sent us a matching set tonight, and I'm just like, dude, how do you like? I don't understand how in the world this kid. It's like they gravitate to him. Like, talk to me about that from your, and like, and I say it because like I look at myself and I'm like, I'm a complete moron. Like, I even remember, messaging you and I'm like, all right, dude, give me like at least a point. I'm not asking where to go, just like give me some place to start. Like, how does your evolution in that gotten to now where it's like, you get into season and obviously the work that you put in speaks for itself, and that's a huge asset to it. But even more so, like, how do you start with that process as far as being successful at it? Because like I walk out and I'm like, well, hopefully we'll run into something, because I think a lot of guys are that way, and for you it's a different game.
Yep. And well, it's pretty much just like hunting. You check a lot of areas off the lists as you go. If you look on social media, it all looks like success, but there's a lot of days that we're going out not finding anything, and we don't post a whole lot about those days because who wants to see that, right? But it's reality. But we do a lot of we put boots on the ground and we check areas, and if we put a couple trips in, we're not finding sheds, then check it off the list. We're not going there, and over the years we've kind of just dialed in and kind of got it to where we're focusing on a few select units, and we just kind of beat the horse to death and go in there and pick up a lot of sheds. So that's pretty much how it is now. As for new area, it's the same process every time. If you want to be successful, just got to get in there and see if they're there or not.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that when we had Neil Davies from Hornady on a while back, and he's like, just remember, everybody lives their best life on social media. So it's funny to hear you say that, right? Where it's like, you just show all the good stuff, man. And like, oh, he just walks out and they just pop up. And yeah, I mean, there's plenty of days where you walk home empty-handed, and it's obviously it's a lot like hunting, where the amount of failures probably far outweigh the successes. So, so now, as far as as you start looking, because I know you're mainly public land guy like we are. One of the things that we're toying with right now is we're not big on like chasing points and things like that. I mean, is that something that you guys? We've kind of taken the approach where, I'm not going to wait 20 years to get into, a 99th percentile unit where, it just doesn't make sense. We're kind of the mindset where this year, I think we're sitting around like 5 points or something like that, and we're using, stuff like that. Do you guys get into that at all, or you guys just strictly say like, we don't even care about that? Like, how do you guys do, in terms of your selection process with those things?
Honestly, I don't think I've saved up more than 3 points in my life. I've grown up hunting bad units, and I've learned from my lessons and stuff like that. But we pretty much just hunt, 1 to 2 point units that we can draw. They're not the best units, but we put in a lot of work, and we know where those animals are, and it's just not worth the time to save up the time or save up the points and, draw a really good tag when we could go grind it out and draw the tag every other year.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we are too, where we're just kind of looking at it and saying, you know what, if you obviously makes sense to, put in every year, and if you just, like you said, if you do your homework and you go out and spend the time to try and actually do some study and some research and, like you said, put boots on the ground. To me, it's one of those things where your success, it has so much more to do with yourself than it is to just keep accumulating. Where, I look at myself and I'm like, man, if I waited to, get into, identifying a specific unit, and I'm like, oh, it's going to take me 10 or 12 or whatever, I start looking at that, and for me, I'm going like, dude, I'm going to be like over 50 by the time that happens. I'm like, yeah. I don't want to hang around that long to like go find, with the hopes of like finding, one elk in one of those years, when I could have 2 or 3, above average hunts if I were to go do that. And all the other years, we're going to make sure that we put in the work to, try and find animals. Because guess what? There's plenty of good animals there are wall hangers, but, that you can find that don't require any points.
Yeah, right.
So, and then I know, you have a good affinity for deer as well. Are you guys kind of the same as far as deer go? I mean, is there anything different? Like, if you look at the differentiation between those, talk about that from a shed perspective. Do you guys have different areas that you go for those, or you kind of, centralize that into, one focus, and you're lucky enough that usually where you find one, you find the other?
We have spots that we can find both deer and elk, but honestly, we do have a lot of spots where it's strictly elk, and you may find a few deer, or we just have mainly deer spots. We're still trying to locate the elk. These last couple of years, they've been giving us the runaround, but no. So we're trying to figure out where those elk are at the moment, but
right. Well, and I mean, I think that's where everybody is, and it's not surprising. And so when you kind of work through your process, from where you are, do you guys, I guess, kind of look at it and say, we're only willing to go so far, and by that I don't mean like physically, hiking, but as far as like where you live, you're obviously a little bit more in the mountains, so to speak. You guys kind of say, well, sky's the limit, and I'm going to hunt border to border, or are you trying to maximize? For us, one of the things was like, we looked at a couple units this year, and like I said, we're at around 5 or something like that. And our big thing was, we want to try and get into a place we've been a couple times before, and our goal is to get in there at least 3 or 4 times this year before season. Does that factor in as far as like how far you travel, or are you just like, I'm going to go wherever is going to be best?
No, pretty much just go wherever we need to go. There's not really a limit. Our spots, our good spots aren't too terribly far from home, but at the same time they are a drive. But from the years we put in out there and all the time we put in, it's definitely worth it to put more time in there, and it's worth the drive for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So, and then, I think for us, we always talk about, and I'm sure you see, we talk about the training aspect, and I see you always posting stuff about working out and things like that. Speak to that. Is that been an evolution for you, where you kind of like realize, like, man, if I put in this much time and effort out in the field, that, how much the training aspect for you is going to make that much of a difference? And have you noticed that being, kind of maybe an evolution in you as a hunter?
Yeah, it definitely helps. I haven't worked out all my life, but the past few years I've really started doing it more. Ever since they put this shed restriction season on, there's several months where I'm still going out, but I'm not going out as hard as I was when we could actually actively pick up sheds and stuff like that. So, yeah, just cardio, honestly, everybody hates it, but it does a lot, honestly, for on the mountain.
Oh, 100%. I'm writing some stuff right now, and putting together some things that are, kind of based off of my background in strength conditioning, and, looking at even probably because I nerd out over this stuff, the science and the research, and I do a lot of parallels with like the military. You see guys as far as rucking and having heavy packs on and being at altitude and trying to cater to that. And it's funny because we joke about it because guys are always like, oh yeah, whatever, you just embrace it, it's gonna suck and all this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of want to put in that preparation because my ability from day 1 to day 5 or 6 or 7 or however many days that you're going to be out there, it just speaks volumes to being able to do it day in and day out. Because it's like, guys will come out gung-ho and they're like, oh yeah, we'll do 8 to 10, and then by the time you get to day 7 you're doing like 2 and 3. And
Yep.
And to me it's like you put in too much time and effort to not. It's like you owe it to yourself, and so it's cool to hear that, because I think that there's always gonna be guys that are that way. That there's like, screw it, I don't care. And it's funny because I wrote something where I was like, one of my favorite things to tell guys like that, I'm like, hey dude, I'm gonna hand you like a 10 or 15 pound dumbbell. Just carry it with you for the next 24 hours. And they'll like look at you and they're like, the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, well, guess what? If you put a little time and effort in, like, that's how much better you would feel on the mountain.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep.
So, but so outside of that, like, obviously we can talk elk hunting and those types of things. You guys did last year. You guys did I know you produced a film on a pretty good size rifle hunt that you guys did.
Yep.
If you are a man of preference, what's your go-to? Are you're like, I'm going bow only, or don't care? You're like, as long as I'm out. Like, what's your preference?
Honestly, before when we could draw the rifle tags, they take more points. So I think we all went through the phase where we drew the rifle point, we killed a good deer, and now we're kind of at the point where we would like to just transition straight into archery. Is at least my feel, and I know my buddies are the same way. It just archery. Something about archery is just something different, and the rifle's fun, but archery is just addicting.
Yeah, that's how I am. I mean, like, people ask me that, and I have a rifle that is virtually collecting dust. I mean, I don't even like feel confident shooting it, basically. And as soon as I started getting into September and just, there's just something different about the proximity. There's something different about them rutting and just even the landscape that time of year, as opposed to like freezing your balls off in November and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
Yep.
I'm not opposed to doing that. I've done plenty of those. I hiked out like an elk in like 2 foot of snow one time, and I'm like, it's a lot easier if there's not snow on the ground. I kind of enjoy that.
Right. Yeah.
So, but as far as other stuff, like what about, I know turkey season, like spring turkey's coming up. You ever get out and chase gobblers?
Yeah, usually once or twice, just because, on the weekends before May 1st, the shed opener, we usually get out a couple times, but I've never really taken it that seriously. I've never killed one, but maybe this year.
It's funny. I went, growing up, I had some buddies back in Nebraska, and that's where I grew up as well. And you did too. You were from Nebraska, right?
No, I'm Colorado born and raised.
Were you? I don't know where I saw that. I thought I saw that you had some connection with Nebraska. Probably thinking of someone else. But I had a buddy, and they had great turkey hunting ground. I kind of got into turkey hunting in college and had some good success. And I've come out here and like I think it's just something to scratch the itch, and that's about it. It's like if you can get out,
Yeah.
have a bow in your hand, or have some type of weapon in your hand where you can be hunting something. It's nice. Yeah, it's way harder. I mean, I've tried a few times out here, and compared to back home, it's like trying to hunt turkeys in the mountains is, I mean, if you think elk hunting stuff, like those things are,
Yep.
If you think elk are ghosts, turkeys are almost worse.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so anyhow, well, what about for you guys, in terms of style, like you guys, throwing pack on and camp on your back, like what's you guys camp style? Do you guys like to be super mobile? What's your approach to that?
Honestly, we do a lot of camping just like right off the road, and then we'll, drive to our spot from there and hike in. I mean, we've tried a few times where we have camp on our back and backpack in, but honestly, the spots we need to get into, it's just, it works, but honestly, if we can camp by the road and be able to come out every night back to the truck, it just seems to be what works best for us. But
yeah,
we usually like having a base camp.
Yeah, and I think we've evolved. I think early on when we started and we were doing probably some more rifle hunts, it was one of those things where, we got into, we have a 16 by 20 outfitter 10, and it was like trying to build a home away from home, and like I love that aspect of it. It's awesome to be able to come back and have kind of all that, the modern conveniences. And I think over the last 3 years, we've evolved in our style as far as wanting to be more capable of moving. I mean, you set up in one of those, and it's like you automatically just create a grid where it's like, this is going to be the distance that we're going to travel, knowing that that's what we're going to come back to every day.
Yep.
And so I think that you guys probably are similar, where it's like, hey, if you go in, you're going to come back to that spot. We can move and make sure that we don't limit ourselves. And I think a lot of guys do that, and not, I don't think to any fault of their own, but you see a lot of guys that come from out of state, and obviously we're probably the highest as far as the amount of out of staters, and we can talk about that next.
Yeah.
But they lock themselves in, and I think that also has something to do a lot of times with preparation, and also it influences the numbers as far as success, because if you pick a spot and you drove 600-700 miles to get here, guess what? You're probably hosed right out of the get-go if you picked a bad spot.
Exactly. Yep.
So talk about that, because I know everybody's talked a little bit about the change in kind of what's coming a little bit, with regards to tags. I know Wyoming just made some changes, like, being in your position where, you're obviously spending a ton of time out in the field. Like, what's your thoughts as far as, without obviously rocking the boat too much, as far as like how Colorado handles, the tag allotments and those types of things, and how do you think it's affecting, positively or negatively with hunting in Colorado? Because I know obviously everyone has their own opinions about that.
I mean, honestly, we haven't had a huge impact where we are, knock on wood, but it's a lot of out-of-staters coming in. But honestly, we have the biggest elk herd, in the western states. So
right.
That's why a lot of guys are filtering into Colorado. And you go on all these forums and Facebook pages, everyone's saying, asking, where's the best place to hunt elk? They're going to say Colorado. So we're going to get a lot of pressure. And honestly, I don't know a whole lot about what's going on with the tags, but I don't think it's going to be good.
Yeah, and I know, like, I've heard everything from, and this will be something we can talk about too, is that the tags are going to creep up, both in-state and out-of-state. I mean, they're talking that the out-of-state tag may run up above 700 to 800, or even closer to 1,000. I think Wyoming, just like their out-of-state tag is going to be almost $1,000 now.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where if the in-state tag, I've heard that they may move it or even double it. And obviously, if you're watching and know anything about what tag prices look like comparatively, it's minuscule for us compared to someone who makes that commitment to come out of state. And I don't know, for me, and you can speak to this, like, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with it, and I'll talk about why I do have a problem if it does change, which it's going to, and the rationale behind that. But I think that the more that we can do to support and move up in terms of supporting how we can maintain public land and all of those types of things. If the tag costs me $100, it's not going to keep me at home. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Exact same thoughts. Like, it sucks, yeah, in a way, but at the same time, so we're still hunting. It's a big part of my life. It is my life, so still gonna be out there doing it.
Yeah. So, speaking of that, and now we'll kind of poke the bear a little bit. I mean, obviously now we're into what's going to be phase one of the implementation of the wolves here in Colorado. We haven't really touched on it. We haven't talked about it a lot. It wasn't anything that I necessarily intended to throw in here, but I think it's okay. I think it's okay to talk about it, and I think it's okay to be passionate about it because as hunters, now we're going to look at the next 3 years of money that is going to be allocated through the state via permits and park permits and tags and all these things that are going to support the initiative behind it. And as I mentioned kind of a little bit before, I think it's like that's one of the things where I go, now it starts to really make a difference in how I feel about the money that's coming out of my pocket based on where I sit with it. And so how's your kind of feeling as far as what the introduction looks like and anything in and around it? I mean, I'm all ears.
Yeah, it's a sensitive subject, but can't do anything about it now.
No, exactly.
It's rough for sure. We already have a lot of problems with lions and bears on their own, and now we're bringing in wolves, which is going to, double those numbers of deer and elk killed every year, if not triple them.
Yeah.
It's going to be insane. It's not good, but Colorado's turned. A lot of people, are moving out of Colorado just because, the Republic of Boulder and Denver and all that.
Oh, yeah.
They were all for wolves, and, they overruled us, not by much, but it's not going to be good.
I think that's what probably pains me the most was to see what the actual percentages were. And so if you don't know, the vote that went in for it was that it passed on a 49.7 to a 50.3 vote. And I kind of look at that and in my head, of course, I'll act like a sore loser and go, well, shouldn't there be a middle where you go, that's not far enough to make a decision that just says we should be all in. You know what I mean? And rightfully so on the other end of it, I would feel the same. But if the vote comes back and it was 70 to 30, I'd say, all right, well, guess what? There's a large majority that are for it. And it doesn't mean that I have to like it by any means, but for me to have it be literally within percentages of being that close, I just kind of go, it just is hard to swallow the justification that you'd say, okay, let's roll with it. And then you look at the money, which I think in the next year, it's $250,000 is going to go towards it, and then the following year in 2022 it goes up to $350,000 in money that's going to be allocated. In the following year it's almost $1 million. So and that's supposed to be the year that they'll introduce them in 2023. And so it's one of those things where, like you said, we can't do anything about it now, and it is what it is, and we're going to have to evolve, I guess, in one way or another. And you talk to guys from other states that have hunted them, that are in states where they not hunted them, or maybe they have, but been in areas where they are, and they talk about just how things are going to immediately change, where the animals like elk and deer and things like that won't have the defense mechanisms to learn how to live in the environment with animals like that. And at the same time, the conversation behind the fact that a lot of folks say, well, they're going to be here anyway. Why are we going to force the issue?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'm all for them coming in by themselves.
Right.
Coming from other states, they're going to do that, but bringing them in is not a good choice.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think. Now so the flip side of this is people go, well, what are you going to do as a hunter? And I said, well, the first thing that I know I'm going to do is I'm going to try and learn as much as I possibly can, number one. Number two is going to be try and figure out where the introduction as far as concentrations and things like that are. And then I'm going to move directly in the opposite direction as far as I can until they manage to spread even more.
Yeah.
So that'll be the interesting one for sure. Like you said, it is what it is. We can't do anything about it now, and I guess we're going to learn. But it's interesting. We talked to a guy from it's actually from Birch Barrel. It was last year at Total Archery. And his contention was that the evolution in Wyoming, because he lives outside of Jackson, was that as time went on, he felt like because of how elk and deer had to learn how to live, with the introduction of the wolves there, that over time the actual quality of the animals went up because their ability to survive and be a little more elusive or evolve meant that kind of a survival of the fittest mentality. And he's like, the quality there shows now, and he feels like there's a correlator there. Like, what, any thought, or I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard that. It was the first time I'd heard it, and I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've heard it a couple times, and it's so hard to say. Like, I just worry about the units with deer numbers that are so low, and then bringing in wolves. Like, yeah, you'll get quality out of the units that hold a lot of deer, but those ones that are already suffering for deer, I think they're going to do a pretty hard number on them, and I don't know that you'll get the same results out of those units as the more populated deer units. But
yeah,
who knows?
And I think the flip side of that too is then at the same time is looking at states historically after introduction. I think maybe us as hunters and those that want to support conservation of land and all the animals and wildlife and all those things would say, well, I'd probably be better off with it if there was also a plan instituted for the control of them. But there won't be anything in place as far as that goes for who knows how long.
For years,
right? And so I think that's probably maybe even a tougher pill to swallow, which that'll be another ballot initiative type situation where you're going to have to fight that battle to get over that hump to where you'd say, okay, well, at least we'll now have the ability to try and work on maintenance within that ecosystem and see how we can try to maybe better enhance it. And there's a lot of arguments there too. So
right.
So how about down the pipeline? I know a lot of what you do with Mile High Pursuit and the things that you guys put out as far as sharing experiences, sharing all the time that you spend in the woods. What about targets? You got the one that's sitting on the mantle that's you're going, that's the one someday, or the ultimate experience or hunt or animal. Like what else outside of that? You got any hopes and aspirations for the dream hunt?
I'd love to hunt archery moose, and then the other one is New Zealand red stag for the two bucket list hunts for me.
Oh yeah, I'm with you on that. I know red stag to me would be amazing, and moose. I know I think I'm gonna get to probably partake in a moose pretty soon. I've got one of my buddies has been putting in for every animal in Colorado for like 15. I think he's on 16 now with all of them. Sheep, goat, moose, elk, and he hasn't drawn a single one of them yet. He struck out on all of them, and I have a feeling that maybe this will be his year. And I told him that whenever you get that moose, I'm going to be there, which means that essentially I'm going to be a pack mule. So.
Yeah.
But how about? Speaking of that alone, I know for us, like last year, we filmed a moose at like 10 yards last year, and I feel like in the last 10 years for me, the moose population has went up. And as much time as you put in, and maybe you're not in areas where maybe they're as populated, but I feel like the moose population in Colorado has just really, really gotten good over the last, probably like 8 to 10 years.
Most definitely. Yeah. We don't hunt a whole lot of units anymore that are, would be good terrain for moose, but I grew up hunting units, kind of more the high country elk type stuff. And yeah, over the years, the moose have honestly almost overran the elk in those areas. It's pretty crazy, but it's also pretty cool to see. But now we're bringing in wolves, so say goodbye to that.
yeah. Let's not forget that. I know.
Yeah.
It's we used to hunt a unit a little more northern, and there was a lot of water in that unit, and a ton of drainages that kind of filtered into some really wet and marshy areas. And we probably hunted that, I bet, probably 5, 6 years, and it was like every year we'd see one, and the next year we saw two, and then I think the last year we were there we saw seven, and and they just, they continue to grow, and I hope that's something too where the tag allocation for those will improve at some point, or like you said, it'll be more meat for wolves. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We don't want to necessarily beat that up too much, but
No.
so I know I've talked with a lot of guys that have done some of those hunts, like in terms of preparation. And I think it's really interesting too when you talk about some of those, international hunts, is they're not as unachievable as a lot of people think. Like, have you done any homework on that? Because I think it's something where if you really start looking into it, that they're very attainable. Like, do you know kind of, have you got that targeted already then?
No, I haven't done a whole lot of homework on it yet. But yeah, that's what I've heard, is it's really not as hard to do as you think. But I'm going to leave that, for 10, 15 years down the road, or maybe even more, and then I'll worry about that. But.
Yeah. So big bull or big deer? What's the ultimate for you? Or
Man, that's super hard. I don't know. I grew up hunting elk, but I didn't even hunt mule deer until 2018. Surprisingly, I hunted elk for I think 9 or 10 years before I even hunted rifled deer. So it's pretty crazy. So I grew up an elk guy, so I'd probably have to go with elk.
Yeah, and you're kind of like me then, because I mean I grew up in whitetail, kind of the mecca of a lot of whitetail and mule deer and stuff like that, sand hills and Platte River deer as far as whitetails go. And I got buddies that are just like nuts about the amount of work they're putting in, the same kind of effort to track down and find deer. And I grew up where my dad never really did a lot of big game hunting, and we did a lot of more bird hunting and things like that. And then in 2002, when I moved to Colorado, one of my friends from back home, his dad used to he grew up on the south gate of Yellowstone. And so he always hunted elk, and kind of drug me out, and that was it for me. And so like I never really grew up hunting deer either. And so for me, we're going to put in for deer this year, and it might be the first year that I've had a deer tag in my pocket. I went on lots of deer hunts, but I've always just been like, I'll go along, it's cool, but I'm hunting elk.
Yeah, right.
If I got my choice, that's always my choice. So
yeah.
But so in terms of putting elk on the ground and picking up sheds off the ground, biggest elk for you as far as taking one, and how close is that to the biggest shed that you've taken?
Okay. Well, honestly, the answer might surprise you, because I have not killed a bull. Hunting elk for all these years, I've hunted bad units, I've killed a few cows, but I have not killed a bull yet. So hopefully this year is the year for that.
That's awesome. Well, that is news. So because and you know what, I think it's something too where I look at that, and again, it's one of those things where in the circles that you run and the people that you see, and we kind of mentioned already, it's like living your best life on social media. People probably go, oh man, like he's probably killed like so many bulls and this and that, and you realize that, I mean, I think that we've killed a lot of elk in probably the last 5 to 6 years, and almost all but 2 years ago I shot a cow and never found her, which was heartbreaking. And it was hunt was winding down, and then back in 2009 I killed first bull, And other than that, all the other elk that I've ever been a part of were with guys that I hunted with, and that are in our camp. So it's like, I haven't been stacking them up myself, and you have a lot of those experiences, and you realize like how valuable they are. Like last year for us was was like gut wrenching, because I had 2 days, called in 2 bulls, and one was the craftiest freaking bull that, like, he must have knew. It was like he was tight wiring the sideline, in the game, where he knew just if he headed straight away from me. I had him at 40 and thought it was a done deal, and he turns around and walks directly away from me and onto private ground. And then the next day we call in a raghorn, and we're kind of Jason, who's not here, for those of you watching, this is his honorary Mile High Pursuit hat here. We're kind of holding it for him today. He was his motto last year was, if it's brown, it's going down. We called in a raghorn, and I had him at 30, and he winded Jason and whirled, and it was over. And it was like, that was my season. So it's not an easy task, and so it's for me. And you see guys that, in the films and stuff like that, and even like finding sheds and things, you realize how much work goes into it. And when people are successful, to see how emotional they get about it, if you've been there, you understand it. And I think a lot of people are drawn to that, you know what I mean? And to me, it's like, now I look at it and go, well, dang man, you deserve to kill a bull this year.
Yeah.
For sure. This is your year, right? Like, after everything that's been going on, like, this got to be it, right? So that's awesome. But anyhow, well, it's been awesome to get you on and catch up. And I think one of the things that we talked about was trying to figure out how we can maybe connect sometime, and love to go out and chase you around on the mountain sometime, and be fun to not steal some spots from you or anything, but just spend some time out in the woods. And what about I know last year, because it's coming up, and I know just open, we kind of talked about total archery. Are you guys going to make a run up there to the total archery this year?
I don't know. That is a good question. I'll have to get with the guys and talk about it. The only reason I usually don't go up there is, I'm introverted. I don't like big crowds of people. So if I could shoot foam in my backyard, I'll do that instead. But we'll see. Yeah. Maybe.
It's last year was our first year, and it was awesome. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and ultimately it was just it was similar to that, which was, it was just a group of us, and we didn't really see, while we were out running the course, we were just kind of by ourselves, and you walked the course, and you ran into people a little bit as you kind of move station to station. But more than anything is, they kind of said, I keep telling people it's like golf, like, because you sign up for like a tee time almost, where it's like you go at 10, next group goes at 10:30, and so it kind of gives you an opportunity where you get to kind of be with, if you bring a group of dudes, you can kind of do your own thing. And so, but if you guys come, we'll definitely have to hook up, and be fun to maybe throw a few downrange.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but you get out to Denver very often? Not very much, I don't think, right?
Once or twice a year, maybe. But other than that, no.
Yeah, and that's all right. I know when I moved to Denver, it was a different place, and it's there's a lot of times now for me where I'm like, it'd be really good to get out and find a lot more open space. So there's serenity in that for sure. So, but well, cool, man. Well, look, I'll let you go. I appreciate you making some time. I know you're super busy. Work is kind of, the man was holding you down a little bit tonight, and I was like, I'm going to wait it out, and definitely worthwhile to get an opportunity to catch up. I want to make sure that people obviously know, number one, how to connect with you, introverted or not, because we want to make sure that people support. And go check out what you do. I know you guys have an awesome YouTube page. You got a ton of good content on there, not only shed hunts, but some of the other stuff that you guys are doing. Check out Mile High Pursuit. I know you got a ton of hats and apparel. We did a little hat swap, so I sent some to him, and he was kind enough to send some back to us. So we're try to support the cause, support each other, support guys that are doing good things and doing it the right way. So what's the easiest way for folks to find you? Just through social media?
Yeah, pretty much just Instagram, Facebook. On Instagram, it's the Antler Alpha is my personal, and then the business one is just Mile High Pursuit, and then Facebook is just my name, Rivors Koskinen, and then we also have a Mile High Pursuit Facebook page, and then Mile High Pursuit on YouTube, and that's pretty much it.
I definitely encourage you guys to go check it out. There's probably lots you can learn and things that you can pick up from Rivers and the rest of his crew. How many? I know I'm trying to remember because I know a couple of the guys that run around with you. Who are some of the other guys in your I don't know, like guys like to call them pro staffers, right?
Pro staffers. Well, the couple of guys I roll with are Alec Moody, Chris Kessner. And if you want to follow them on social media, it's the Shed Chief and then Blitzed Yeti. Those are the two guys I roll around with the most. We've connected over the years and kind of just put all our heads together and went out, and we've had a lot of success together, just, brainstorming ideas, all knowing units equally, and we just put it all together, and it's been a unbeatable combo.
Yeah,
so.
and I think there's a lot to be said about finding guys that have common interests. Finding friends that have the same desire and passion to do what you do. I'm sure that over the years, if you kind of mentioned guiding and things like that, you learn real quick. You spend a day or two with someone in the woods, folks that you want to spend 2 or 3 more days in the woods with, and those that you don't.
Exactly, 100%. Yep.
And we've all been there, so it's always good to do that. But we would welcome the opportunity to have you in our camp anytime. So appreciate.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to make that happen.
Love to do that. I know you're not too far away, so we'll follow up, and maybe we can find a way to connect over the summer months or something like that, and see kind of what else, a little bit off script, if you will, and we'll definitely keep in touch. So, all right,
sure.
Appreciate your time. We'll look forward to seeing more. Make sure you guys go look up Mile High Pursuit and Rivers Antler Alpha, and I'm sure you guys are going to have some awesome content coming out as soon as the shed season opens. Make sure you guys give them a follow. Check out their YouTube page, and as always, we appreciate you stopping in. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope that we'll see you next time.